Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, it's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, I'm joined by spiritual advisor and fellow author, Jennifer Spor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome to connect with another Jennifer.
Yeah, there's a few of us in the universe, right?
There is, right?
Well, tell me all about you and why you do what you do.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great, fantastic question. I'm trying to think, how do I make a big, long story short? Basically, I had a whole other life before I started my business. I worked in the retail industry for 23, 24 years and had worked my way up the corporate ladder, and as so many people I know can relate with, right? I got to a place on my path where I had checked all the boxes off of what traditional society teaches us what it means to achieve success. And essentially what happened is I ran out of boxes to check off the list. It's like I'd always been an overachiever and very driven, and I ran out of promotion. Ran out of new things to learn in my career. And that's really when the fog started to lift. I started, contemplating around, hey, what was next? And at the same time, I've always been very sensitive, energetically, empathic ever since I can remember. And at that time, my intuitive gifts were really starting to naturally come forward too. So I was starting to spend more time outside of my work studying metaphysics and connecting with my gifts and all of that spiritual fun stuff. But I didn't take action to make any changes in my life really at the time, and for lots of reasons. A big one were the golden handcuffs, I had worked my way up, right, to this 6-figure salary and lots of questions started pouring in. Where else would I go? What else would I do? And it prevented me from taking action. And then my mother actually, sometime later, became diagnosed with terminal 4 lung cancer. And at the time, I was living on the opposite end of the country from her. And my mom and I had a complex relationship. I loved her. That being said, that was really the catalyst for me taking action, because in my prior career, I was on 24/7 all the time. I worked in store operations and oversaw about 1,200 stores. So especially during holidays and all those kinds of things, I'd be getting all types of phone calls and all types of hours of the day and night. So my moment for my why, which I'm getting to in a second. I was sitting by my mom's bedside a few days before she died. And my phone was blowing up. At that time, it was a BlackBerry. Everybody probably remembers those. I actually missed them. I missed that keyboard, but I digress. My phone was blowing up, and that's when it happened. I just had this aha moment, like this epiphany. You know what? My phone's blowing up. I'm feeling like I'm expected to be reacting to this issue that's happening with my work. And then on the other side of me, here's my mother die. And so where should I focus my energy? Is it being present with her, or is it reacting to yet another issue that's happening that could have been prevented, based upon someone else's mishap, So that was really the moment for me where I said to myself right then and there, and then, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not stuck in my life. And in that moment, my courage exceeded my fear. And then that was really the beginning of the end of that life, who I was then. I ended up, I was a corporate store operations director for a big retail company. I ended up voluntarily stepping down from my role. Remote culture wasn't something that existed there at that time. And much like a country song, I literally rented out my house in New Jersey. I live in Idaho now. Rented out my house in New Jersey, packed up my car, and headed out west. I literally packed up my car, like drove by myself out to Idaho, and that was that. And at that point, I made the big move. At that time, I thought it was because I wanted to be closer to my family because my mom had passed recently during that time. That was really just the very first step in an unfolding of a whole other story. I didn't know I was going to start a business and become an entrepreneur and a podcast host and all the other things I'm doing now when I made that move. I just knew that I could no longer be where I was. Like I wasn't honoring myself. So I came out here where I'm at now and kept consulting for my old company for a little while on some projects that I had been a stakeholder on. And but it was through that journey of figuring out what was next. I had been to therapists and coaches and had psychic readings and healing and all the things. And what I realized on my own journey is that I couldn't find anyone who could actually support me in one, relating to all of this awakening that I was experiencing on my journey. But then how do I take all that and integrate that into my physical reality? You know, how does all of these awarenesses impact how I'm going to live my life moving forward? And that was what inspired me to start my business, because I decided, you know what? I'm hurt. What? I'm this person. I need to do this. So that's what inspired me to start my business. And that's the very long-winded answer to your question, you know, why I do what I do. And that's it. That's exactly why, because we go throughout our lives so much so saying, I know that, or someday, or this day, or that. But how many of us actually take those awarenesses and integrate them and embody them into who we are? And that's what I do.
The universe needed a you, and you gave yourself out there for it, right?
Yes, that's how it works though, right?
Totally. Well, thank you for sharing. So another thing we talk about on the podcast is money memories too. So I want to get to there, but I also want to talk about, we're co-authoring something together. So I would love you to share what you're open to sharing before it's maybe in everybody's hands.
Yeah. So yes, a tremendous blessing. I'm just like finding my words right now, because the experience of co-authoring in a book is so sacred. And you and I are co-authoring together in a book, Sacred Silver Lining. And it is really centered around stories of amazing, courageous women who are sharing some of the darkest experiences of their life and how they actually, you know, moved through and overcame those experiences to thrive, to, you know, and I think there's a big difference between surviving something and then actually being able to take those experiences and thrive from them. And I'm just so grateful to be part of that book project with everybody. And this is actually my second book that I'm co-authoring. Being part of something with that is very healing and transformational. And it's also a wonderful way to connect in sisterhood, you know. And I, in my heart of hearts, believe that sharing our story is one of the most powerful ways that we can not only evolve on our own ascension journey, but also help to heal the world. Because so many of us have been living in a world for, you know, tens of thousands of years, who knows how long, you know, being taught that vulnerability is weakness, and that we're to keep our personal experiences behind closed doors. And I think that is a lot of the cause of the turmoil that we're experiencing in the world today is a result of us having done that for so long. And it's time to change that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's a magic in the vulnerability of the other 20 women that are co-authoring this with us. I'm very excited for the journey. It's my first opportunity co-authoring or writing anything quite like this. So really excited and glad to be a part of that with you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that we're a part of it together. And I'm so happy and grateful to have this conversation.
Well, that kind of ties into, I know that you want to share maybe portions of what your chapter experience was like, but I feel like that goes into kind of our next questions as well of like money memories, right? So what's a money memory that you experienced as a young person or teenager that you feel like, really helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
Yeah, money memory for me that comes forward is really, um, so just to kind of set the stage. So, before I was on my own at an early age at about 16, but before that, I was living with my mom. And a money memory for me that really comes forward is that my mom just kind of recklessly, spent money and threw money around and didn't hold a lot of value. Like we'd start over a lot. Like every time we move, all new everything. And it was almost just like, you know what it is? And I'm actually experiencing this energy real time right now. And so I'm telling you this is that it imprinted within me that money is fleeting.
Oh,
That's huge. Like I didn't even think about that in recalling this memory until just that now moment. So it wasn't even about her, not valuing things. It really went back to this imprint as a child that money was fleeting. And so as a child living with my mom, I still kind of had my mom even as a barrier somewhat to that. And so when I was out on my own at 16, without that buffer, so to speak, my mom being around, I learned the hard way, basically like how to manage money to take care of myself, to pay bills and like all of those things. That feels like kind of one of the most prominent memories.
it's amazing how when we talk on this podcast too, how folks will have that moment and it hits them literally as we're having the conversation. You and I talked a little bit before, but I was like, do you need a moment? And you're like, no, let's just do it. But it's pretty amazing how, having these conversations, what floods in that moment and the feelings, the emotions, and really kind of that, for lack of a better term, that aha moment of you're like, oh, yes, that's why I look at things the way I do.
Yes. Yeah. And then all the societal constructs that we have, which kind of go into, the chapter that I write about in Sacred Silver Lining, the societal constructs that we have in place promote illusory beliefs about money too, right? Like credit card. And, that actually, for example, using a credit card to buy something is like you're actually buying something, but you're really not because you get the bill later.
And you bring up a good point because a lot of people think of that as like, there's
it's not real.
No, and there's that whole hashtag now that drives me crazy, the girl math. Oh, well, if I bought it on a credit card, I actually didn't pay for it because it was free. No, it's not free. You're paying for it. You've got interest. You've got everything else. That is not free. Hashtag girl math. Like, I want hashtag girl math to be like the truth. Let's talk through really what that is. But you're spot on.
Yes. And I learned that the hard way on my own, what it was I've had lots of money spirals on my journey, right? Just learning through experience how to be a good steward money, and also that money is an energy. And that in order to create true sustainable like wealth consciousness and abundance. One, it's definitely not a destination. Okay. Like we're always evolving and always cultivating deeper embodiments of what I'm talking about here. But again, we have societal structures in place that approach even generating wealth from an inverted standpoint, right? It's like, especially as a business owner, as a small business owner, it's like, oh, I just need to get a coach who will help me get to 5-figure months or 6-figure months, or, we've all seen it out there, right? And to me, that is the direct opposite approach to take in terms of really achieving and starting to embody through, I call it divine creatorship, through elevated, abundant, prosperity consciousness. That isn't created from a coach or from clients or from anything else. That comes from God through you. And the type of person that you choose to show up as in the world, everything's energy. And that's a direct reflection of what I believe comes back to you. Like I could tell tons of stories as an entrepreneur because, boy, if someone's listening to this and they don't own a business, that's one of the surefire ways for all your nigglies to come up, is to decide that you're going to own a business. But I have tons of stories I could share where I've done something completely illogical, taken a week off out of the blue or a couple of weeks, because I felt like I needed space and didn't really know why. And money would show up. It'd come through a client or it would come, from other places. But it's really just, my whole point of sharing this is just to say that trusting, right, the universe, that we're always supported, and that as long as we honor how we're feeling guided to live expressed in our truth, then money is just one of the things that will always come to us. I feel like I went off on a bit of a tangent, but I could really talk about this for days.
No, super fascinating. And I feel like in that you kind of also check the box of like talking through financial infidelities a little bit, of navigating that. Anything else that you want to add to that topic as well? Normally I ask it, but you were already in it. So
yeah, I mean, just to share, we were talking about this before. This really speaks to what my chapter is about in the Sacred Silver Linings book. What I really talked about in that book was my call to deeper truth. And this wasn't all that long ago. I was already in my business and just was honestly feeling fed up and felt like I was saying more and more the truths of a lot of the false constructs that we live in, in the way that the financial system is set up, with credit cards and everything included, is set up for us to continue looking outside of ourselves for the answers to everything. And feeding into this, it really brought me to a place with finances really only being one of the examples of where are all of the places that I'm seeing that I feel like we're creating, or I'm creating, from a place of lack and from a place of looking outside myself. And how can I live more fully in integrity with who I am and in truth with who I am? And so I made an intentional declaration to myself that I would step out of those constructs, change the way I was managing my finances, change the way that I was managing my business and my life. And I told you this when we were talking earlier, but it's like, it was a shitstorm. Why, for probably about a year, it felt like everything in my life was falling apart. But it was only because I was in that void, or in that in-between space of extracting myself from those ulcers, to step into the true essence of who I really am as a divine creator. And that's something that I would invite everyone listening to explore, right? Like, we are so freaking powerful. We have the power, free will. We've been gifted with free will to create our reality. And so only we get to choose. And the only time adverse experiences happen, it's really when we've given consent to give away our power in some way. So eventually, I literally woke up one morning and the sun was literally out, and my body literally felt lighter when I woke up one morning after this extended period of time. And doors opened, like different clients started coming in, money started coming in abundance. It just was all happening.
That goes beautifully right into our last and final question of like, what are you doing differently? Like, what tips and tricks can you share that you're utilizing money differently in your own household?
Yeah. I mean, if there's obviously, planning, and it's really just about clear intention and clear energy around that intention. It's really beyond manifesting, it's embodying clearly what we want to call in, like I would say, my husband's following my lead. You know what I mean? But it's really about clear intention and clear energy, and then tuning in to your soul's guidance in terms of inspired action that you're feeling called to take, to call that in, to create that. The only time that we ever not have our prayers answered, or we think we don't, is because we have some sort of limiting belief or, fear that is around, whatever it is that we desire. And it's also really smart to be radically honest with yourself about why you desire what you desire. Because if your deeper motives are truly around coming from a space of truth and love, then, you're on the clear path forward. And I know that's not all surrounding the practicality of managing money per se, but it really is an intention and an energy.
It goes back to being, truly impeccable with yourself and transparent with yourself.
Yes, which then just by default, you're automatically a better steward with money. Like if you don't have it, don't spend it. And I'm not saying that it's bad to have a house mortgage or like anything like that. It's really more about the space from which you come from when you make the decision to move forward with something. It really is all about your energy.
Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing today. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's fun to chat.
Of course. No, my pleasure. And hopefully those of you watching and listening will join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.